Hey there, Michelle. How's it going today?
Good, Lindsay. I am in a new space and we're figuring it out and everything is good.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You're in your new home. So exciting, Michelle, to have a brand new home and decorating and all that good stuff. And I have a
Yes.
question for you though.
Yes.
Will you be setting up a kids table at your new home for the
It's
kids?
it's actually interesting that you bring that up because even before I was thinking about this episode, I was looking for deals on kids' tables
Uh-huh.
to have something just where my kids can eat and sit. But my son is 6 and he's not into the idea of a
No, no,
kids' table.
no.
He looked at it. I showed him the pictures and he said, I don't want to sit on that.
He
But my
rejects it.
daughter,
Yeah.
right, my daughter wants it. She's little. So
Yeah.
where I'm gonna buy that. But I mean, when you were a kid,
Yeah.
did at big family functions, do you sit at a kids table or did you sit with the adults?
No, when I was a kid, we didn't have the family functions were not so huge that there
Mhm.
were tons of other kids, because we have
Mhm.
a small family. So we would maybe go to my grandmother's house and we would all sit together because there was just one additional person at the table.
Right.
Right? Yeah. So that was it. So no big kids table in my world, but we know it is a thing. And I
Mhm.
mean, we're going to get into this topic, which actually speaks to something much bigger and more significant. Right,
Yes.
Michelle? Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm excited about this today. This was inspired by an article I saw, but we'll talk a little bit about the article, but mostly we're going to talk about our own opinions, things we've observed around the world
Yeah.
regarding kids. And also, we're going to give you some good vocab.
Yeah, and the way kids are treated by adults, are they treated as kids or as adults? I think it varies a lot around the world. So,
Mhm.
first, I want to start by saying thank you to Edison Isaac, who gave us a 5-star review in the Android app. So,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much. We love those reviews. If you are listening to this podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iOS, or Android, leave us a review and we'll read your name out loud on the show. All right?
All right. Thank you
Good.
so much. And also, before we get into it, I wanted to share results from a Spotify poll we did recently. Episode 2311 was how to quote famous animated movies in English. Lindsay, what was the poll for that?
Yeah, so we talked about animated movies and why they matter when we quote them. And the
Mhm.
question was, do you like to watch animated movies? Yes or no? And what were the results, Michelle? What is the profile of our audience?
Yes, you guys love it. So for yes, we got 88% and
Yeah.
no, only 11%. So,
Yes. Wow. So people really love animated movies.
yeah,
Interesting.
I get it. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, we get it. We get it.
All right, guys. So let's get into this topic. So this is from an article on HuffPost.com by Taylor Tobin. It was published on November 20th, 2024, and it's called Read This Before You Even Think About Putting Someone at the Kids Table. This
Yeah.
holiday, there are lots of pros and cons to consider for both the kids and the adults. So
Yeah.
very interesting. This kind of, caught my eye. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So I've had conversations, even just in the last few weeks, with parents of only children talking about how they brought
Mm.
their kid to maybe a holiday dinner where there were lots of adults and the kid just did great, right? Talking to adults. So
Mm.
sometimes when there's one child in a family, the child can be a little bit more verbal, right? Learns to use bigger words because they're basically hanging out with adults, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. My mom is
Yeah.
an only child, and she always
Mhm.
talks about how she just hung out with adults all the time.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
that is interesting. I mean, the basic idea of this article was people have to decide if kids should have their own table or sit with the adults. So,
Yes.
I mean, so I mean, as a kid, sometimes there would be a kids' table.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just depended on the space,
Yeah.
how formal was the meal. But as a kid, I don't know how you were, but I liked being with adults. I liked being with my mom's friends. Even to
Yeah.
this day, I
Yeah.
feel very close to my mom's friends. Like they're all other moms to me. And
Interesting.
I if my mom were to invite me to lunch with her friends now, I would be totally going and I would just be so excited. So, and that's
Yeah.
just so I always enjoyed that. What about you? How was your
I think
feeling?
I was a little bit in the middle. I really enjoyed talking to my friends' parents, and I could talk to
Mhm.
them for sure, but I also just liked it when it was just us kids. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Right.
And we had our own space, that sort of thing. So somewhere in the middle for sure. But in my mind, I love this topic today for our listeners because the table is kind of a metaphor in my mind for
Right.
life, right? So I remember traveling in Slovenia just this past September, and we went for our Aperol spritzes, right, which is a really common drink in the summer in Italy and Slovenia, Croatia. And we're sitting there, and there's a little, it's an outdoor bar with an outdoor music, lovely band playing, beautiful summer afternoon, and there's a small playground. But what I noticed immediately was there are kids, but no adults at the playground, right? No
Mm.
adults essentially, quote unquote, hovering. Now, I'm not trying to make any judgments. I'm not a parent, but I did notice the stark difference between how watched the kids are in the US versus when I travel abroad. Have you noticed that, Michelle?
Yes, I have. And I mean, uh, so, as a parent, I look over all this information, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, different
Yeah.
philosophies on this and that. And I always try with my kids, to give them a little space at the playground. I'm
Yeah.
watching them, but I don't and if they were going to do anything extremely dangerous, of course I would step in. But what I don't want to do is stand behind them and just say, "Oh, be careful. Oh, be careful. Oh, be careful."
Right.
And my kids are pretty big climbers, I think,
I'm
because
sure
of
they
that.
are. Yeah.
They can, I mean, and they're not afraid.
Yeah.
And I do have friends who are very nervous,
Mm-hmm.
more so nervous. Even my brother-in-law, sometimes we joke about him because he's like he just turned 30. And we always joke that he gets so much more nervous than Dan and I because, he's not used to it. So
Yeah.
it's just interesting because I want my kids to have that independence and to learn from their own mistakes.
Yeah, and it's so if we go one level deeper into cultural differences, I think the reasons that parents might be more hands off, and I love the expression for our listeners, hands off
Hands
today,
off. Yep.
could be that they're looking for a different value to foster in their kids, right? I know that the value of independence in the US is so important, right? And I agree. It is so important for a kid to be able to do everything on their own. But I wonder if when I go to a place like Italy, and the kids are watched, let's say, a little more lightly, similar to what you're saying, Michelle, your
Mhm.
style. Is it for another value they're looking for in their kids? Is it something
Mm.
other than independence? Is it the
Mm.
freedom of the parents too? Like what is it? It's just, oh my God, this is fascinating.
Yeah.
And this translates into who our kids become, right? And
Right.
who we become as parents. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of things in the US, there's different styles of childcare. So
Yeah.
some schools, it's very teacher led, and then you throw out words like play based. I once took a tour of have you heard of a Montessori school?
Yeah, yeah, I've heard of that.
Right.
Mhm.
So that's kind of in my understanding one of those where they try and make things the kids like the best size for the kids. They give kids lots of responsibilities. And I once took a tour of one, and there were it was the cutest thing. There was like a 2-year-old squeegeeing the window of the daycare to clean it. And it was so cute, but I was just thinking how smart that is to give kids responsibility, to give them that
Yeah,
chance. I mean, even
I
my
love that.
daughter now, she yells at me when I try and buckle her car seat, and I could
Oh,
do it so much faster because she wants to do it and she
that's
can
so
do it.
cute.
It's going to take longer, but I want her to know that I believe that she can do it.
Yes, I love that. That is so interesting. And it kind of makes me think, I wonder what our listeners would say around the world. What is the thing you want your kids to think culturally? What is that value? Like I said, we want our kids here in the US to be able to do it by themselves, tie your shoes by yourself, do this by yourself. What is that the same around the world? I
Yeah,
don't think so, right? I think it's
right.
probably something different. Neither is better or worse, but I'm just curious. Just
Yeah.
really evokes that cultural curiosity,
It
right?
is very interesting. And then, at the same token, we want them to do things by themselves, but there is also that hovering that,
Hovering.
let you met the helicopter parents
Yes. Yes.
so, I mean, with the kids table, the article mentioned, okay, a pro is that kids are on their own. They can feel that independence, be with
Right.
their friends, but also it said that a pro of being with the adults is you can learn from the adults. That you can learn
Yes.
how to behave at the table, the speaking, all sorts of things. So
Mhm.
um but it is interesting how cultural this is.
Yeah, also in terms of what they're eating, right? So, they're more likely to be served an adult meal if they're sitting with the adults, I would imagine, right?
Mhm,
Probably,
mhm.
maybe, and
Right.
therefore expanding their taste buds earlier.
Mhm.
If I become a parent in the future, I wonder, will I take the time to make a special kids meal, or will I just say, you're eating Brussels sprouts with me? Like, I'm going to chop them up for you, but you're going to eat them, you know?
Yeah. In my experience, I had such good intentions, and I thought I will never make separate meals for my kids. And then
Yeah.
it's just you go so crazy. You just think, oh,
Oh,
fine.
and then they're gonna be hungry because they don't want the Brussels sprouts, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
just
man.
it's like every idea, dream you have of how
Yeah.
it's going to be. It may be for the first year or two, but and then no,
And
at least
then
for
it
me.
goes back to the chicken wing or the, what is it? Chicken
To the chicken
tenders. Chicken
fingers. Yeah,
tenders,
chicken
oh gosh. But
tenders.
but it's a whole 'nother topic, right? The
Yeah.
problems that we have with the food we have in the US is so bad, right? The fried food, and maybe there's special organic chicken tenders, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But
I
anyways,
know.
yeah. All
Yeah,
right,
we could talk about I mean, that's a whole yeah. Oh, I have
yeah.
so much to say, but okay.
For sure. So, we're going to take a quick break and then we're going to come back and give our listeners some special vocabulary words that work whether you have kids and you're maybe bringing your child to a party, maybe in the US, for example, or even if you don't have kids, you'll probably end up at a party with kids, right? You're an aunt, you're an uncle, you're a friend. We need to
Yes.
know this vocabulary, okay? So,
Yes. Yes.
okay, Michelle. So, let's get into some vocab that all of our listeners need to know, whether they're parents or not. All right?
Yes. All
Yes.
right. So, kids table, we've already been talking about that.
Yes.
So, okay,
Mhm.
so the kids table is over there and the adults are over here.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And again, we've said that the kids' table could be a metaphor for how kids are treated in your culture. And this is a great conversation starter, by the way.
Oh,
If our
yeah.
listeners want to
This
start
is
a
very
conversation with
interesting.
a native speaker or really with anyone from anywhere in the world different from your country, ask them these questions. Really good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
What else?
Okay, so the next one is seating arrangements. So
Hmm.
this is where everybody sits. So you could say, I'm just thinking of seating arrangements for this party. So and this leads into the next one actually. So we'll just do it all in one. Assigned seats.
Yes.
Um Sometime I recently I went to a big family dinner and this person always has name cards, which is another vocabulary word for today.
Yeah.
Always where everybody should sit. Are you ever at something where they have name cards
Yeah,
out?
I mean, when I go to a wedding, definitely there are assigned seats most of the time. Usually the bride and groom have spent like a year thinking about seating assignments, seating charts, things
Yes.
like that. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
sometimes I'll go to a special party where the host just wants to be more intentional. And so they will assign seats.
Right. Right, exactly. So yeah, assigned seats. I don't
Sam.
think I'm going to do assigned seats. Everyone can just sit where they want.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's one where our listeners might need if they're going to any kind of party, any kind of event with kids there or not. We need that term. Next one is
Mhm.
kids menu. So I'm making a kids menu because I don't think the kids will eat my casserole. Oh boy, oh boy. Yep. And so often you go to a restaurant in the US and there will be a kids menu. Usually it's on the back, right at the very end of the
Mhm,
menu.
mhm.
Usually it has like 3 or 4 items, mac and cheese,
Pasta,
grilled
yeah.
cheese, all the things I like to eat.
Yeah, it's just I remember when my son was a baby, I read somewhere that says, "Oh, try and go to restaurants that they don't have a typical kids menu and that the real food is on the kids menu or they don't have a kids menu."
Yeah.
And it just I loved that idea.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll take them to maybe an Indian restaurant or another kind of restaurant where there isn't a kids menu and my son will eat naan and my daughter will eat rice and
Right.
okay, that's all right. But I don't know. I with the kids menu, it is kind of disappointing because they're always just eating the chicken fingers. But
Yeah, for sure. My niece, oh my gosh, the number of times I've seen her order mac and cheese, and
yeah.
she'll order mac and cheese on top of pizza, and I tell her, "Emery, you're doing carbs on carbs there. What are you doing? This is insane."
That's hilarious. Well, my son doesn't like anything with melted cheese. So he
Oh,
hates
wow.
macaroni and cheese. And with pizza, which we had just last night, we had to every time we get pizza, we have to scrape the cheese off of it.
That's just killing the pizza. That's
I
killing the whole
know.
point of the pizza. Our
I
listeners
know.
are
This
probably
guy.
freaking out right now. I can't even
What a silly man. Yeah,
What
I
a silly
know.
man. All right, and then the
All right.
last one that our listeners wanna know, for some kind of event, especially around dinner parties, name cards. So again, when there
Mhm.
are assigned seats, you might have a name card, especially in a fancier place, like a wedding,
Right.
for
Right.
example, right? Let's put out name cards, we can decorate them too. Yeah, interesting, okay. Michelle, should we roll into a role play here just to
Roll
show our
into
listeners?
role play. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yes. All right, here we go. So, and again, guys, this is for everyone because no matter what, whether you don't have kids or you do, you're probably going to end up at a party where your friends bring their kids or something like
Yes.
that, right?
Yes,
Yes.
exactly, exactly. All right, so here you arrived at my dinner party with your kids.
Okay, here we go. So, where should I sit?
Okay, so kids are over there
Okay, guys, there's the kids table.
and adults over here.
Oh, there are assigned seats?
Yeah, I thought it would be easier to have name cards.
Oh, okay, great. What professional seating arrangements?
Thank you, thank you. Oh, and on the kids menu tonight is chicken fingers and fries.
Perfect. That's funny. It's so true, right? It's so true. But I guess having a kids table too does let the adults kind of relax for a second, right? A little space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so many pros and cons, and just they're so yeah. You sometimes you want to sit them sometimes with them. Sometimes you really just want to
Mhm.
talk to the adults. So it all depends on
Right.
the situation.
Oh, yeah. So many of our listeners are parents, so they know exactly what you're saying, Michelle. So let's break down the vocabulary we used here and then we'll finish up the episode. So what did we say first, Michelle?
Okay, so I said okay. Oh no, you said okay, guys. There's the kids' table.
Right. So I'm talking to the kids. I'm pointing in the direction of that table. So I'm telling them to go over there. Right. And then I said, "Oh, there are assigned seats, right?"
Mhm.
So I guess I saw something on the table or something. I don't know. Or I didn't know where to sit. So I said, "Are there assigned seats?" Right.
Right, and then I said, yeah, I thought it would just be easier to have name cards.
And then I said, "Oh, okay, great. What professional seating arrangements?" Now, this is interesting for our listeners here. The way I said this, I want to
What?
highlight this as a
Yeah,
bonus, and this could actually be another episode, another day.
yeah.
I said, "Oh, okay, great. What professional seating arrangements?" I need to make sure we get the right intonation there, right?
Yeah,
What am
right.
I saying here?
You're saying the seating arrangements are very professional. Right.
Yeah.
It makes me think of, Little Red Riding Hood when she says,
Oh,
"What
what
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 big teeth you
what big
have. What
teeth
big"
you have. Right, right, right.
and
Let's
it's basically saying, "Oh, you have big teeth. You
yeah,
have big eyes."
yeah, that's a really important takeaway. Not for today, but for another episode.
Yeah,
So guys,
yeah,
hit the
let's do
follow
it.
button on the podcast. We're coming back to that one for sure. And we'll probably
Yep.
bring in the Red Riding Hood piece as well. Okay. So then what else, Michelle? What'd you say next?
Okay, then I said, "Oh, and on the kids' menu tonight is chicken fingers and fries."
Excellent. All right, good. So in this episode, we've shown our listeners some key vocabulary that they will hear pretty much if they show up to any party, especially as you get into your 30s, your 40s. Your friends have kids or you're probably an aunt or an uncle. And so this is going to come up, right?
Mhm.
So key, so important to connect at
Yeah.
parties. Yeah.
Definitely. And speaking about parties, I mean, we recently had the holidays. So check out episode 23, how to talk about holiday magic in English.
All right. Any takeaway today, Michelle, that we should think
Whew.
about?
The takeaway today is we could really talk for a long time about all this stuff. This is just and that goes to show you how good this is for connection. It's not just about the kids' table, as Lindsay said, it's that metaphor and the philosophies behind how do we treat kids
Mhm.
compared to adults.
Exactly.
Are kids or are they tiny adults?
Yes, yes. Go ahead, Michelle. Sorry.
And what I've heard, no, it's fine. What I've heard, yeah, every time you think, oh, they're this, they're that. Yeah, I remember seeing some Instagram posts that say, "Oh no, kids aren't tiny adults. They're kids. They have different
Yeah.
brains."
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah.
So
Sure.
there's a lot to think about.
There's a lot there, and I was thinking exactly what that quote, right? Are kids kids or are they tiny adults? Are they
Yeah.
small adults? And so that would be essentially some form of that would be the way to start this conversation. In your
Yeah.
culture,
Yeah.
how do we look at kids? And the truth is though, even within American culture, this has changed over time. Right.
Yeah.
So if you look back
Oh,
to,
yes.
the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, I think maybe historically they have been more considered small adults. And it's just
Mhm.
been over the last, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 years, with research being done and things like that. I mean, my mom was a child
Yeah. I
psychologist, so
was
she
just
was,
thinking about that. Yes.
you know, and so and then there's been backlashes against that. There's so much here. So if you do a little reading, start the conversation, we could learn
Mhm.
so much and obviously connect.
Yes, absolutely. I love it. All right. Well, thanks
Yes.
for chatting about this with me, Lindsay, today, and I'll see you next time.
All right. Take care, Michelle. Bye.
All right. Bye.